Welcome to the webinar, Introduction to EFFICIENCIES Voluntary Certification and Discussion of Municipal Incentive Options, hosted by Copenhagen Center on Energy Efficiency in collaboration with World Resources Institute and various partners. This webinar is organized under the umbrella of Building Efficiency Accelerator. We are pleased to announce that more than 140 people have registered for this webinar, so everybody, welcome. My name is Aristeidis Tsakiris, and I'm an academic employee at Copenhagen Center on Energy Efficiency. The center conducts research and advisory activities in the field of energy efficiency and serves as the energy efficiency hub for the Sustainable Energy for All initiative. The center has an established network of global, regional, and national partners with a broad range of stakeholders to help accelerate the implementation of energy efficiency activities. We also support Building's Efficiency Accelerator with hosting different webinars from various partners. I would like to briefly introduce the speakers of today's webinar. Jonathan is the Director of Global Projects and Partnerships at World Green Building Council. Corinne is a Senior Operation Officer focused on climate-related investments at International Finance Corporation. And Ommid is a Senior Green Buildings Industry Specialist in the International Finance Corporation Climate Business Department. On a regular basis, the Building Efficiency Accelerator is conducting webinars. All materials, including recordings and presentations from previous webinars, can be found on Copenhagen Center's Knowledge Management System. In the e-learning section, we have a shortcut for the Building Efficiency Accelerator webinar collection. The material of today's webinar will be uploaded shortly. Finally, I would like to inform that you can send us your questions and we will do our best to answer as many as we can at the end of the presentations. Please do not forget to mention the name of the panelist that the question is for. I would like to hand over now to Jonathan. Jonathan, the floor is yours.
Great. Welcome, everyone. Hopefully you can see my screen, which is now becoming a full screen. Aris, thank you very much for coordinating this webinar. C2E2 always does a great job in setting these up and making them happen. So I am here to give the introduction on behalf of World Green Building Council and actually on behalf of the World Resources Institute. As Aris mentioned, this is a webinar on the Incentive and Other Voluntary Programs Working Group. The goal and the three objectives of the Sustainable Energy for All initiative are up on the screen. I think many of you are familiar with them. Of course, achieving sustainable energy for all by 2030 through the three objectives of universal access, doubling the rate of energy efficiency, and doubling renewables. As Aris mentioned, there are a number of accelerators under the SE for All initiative, and the Buildings Efficiency Accelerator is one of the 6, of course, the one we are going to focus on today. For those of you who are on the webinar and are representing cities or wondering actually what cities are signing up to do, it's now listed on your screen. Each city participating in the Building Efficiency Accelerator is committing to implement one enabling policy, at least one demonstration project, and also to create a baseline for tracking and reporting of annual progress. In terms of what the BEA provides to those cities who are able to make that commitment, there is really a strong support system from World Green Building Council, IFC, and about 30 other partners. These include expertise to help the local officials prioritize the process of which policy and project to take on. There is tools, expertise, and solutions. Exactly, an example of this is today's webinar. There are some funding opportunities for cities, as well as international recognition and collaboration. Up now on your screen are all of the partners associated with the Building Efficiency Accelerator. As you can see, it's a very strong group of both public and private sector organizations with expertise that is standing at the ready to support the cities that are part of the BEA. And now up on your screen, you can see all of the current participants of the BEA. In total, there are now up to almost 30 subnational jurisdictions that have made this commitment and are now working hard on their own and with their partners. Just before handing over the presenter powers, I wanted to just quickly share the cities and subnational jurisdictions with a green star beside their name are those being supported by a Green Building Council. The World Green Building Council is made up of 76 member Green Building Councils who operate a network. Green Building Councils are at 3 levels: established Green Building Councils, emerging Green Building Councils, and prospective Green Building Councils. And Green Building Councils understand the value of certification and other voluntary programs. Going back to COP21, Green Building Councils committed to certify an additional over 1 billion square meters of green building space by 2020. That's in addition to the 1 billion square meters that has already been certified under such programs as LEED, Green Star, DGNB, and others. You can also see there's a strong commitment to train green building professionals by 2020, because we know that it is those professionals, both public sector and private sector, that will allow us, and therefore also cities and buildings around the world, to achieve efficiency. And just to give a little bit of perspective, up on your screen now are the BEA working groups. As you can see, there are 6. This one used to be called certification/above code programs, but we've changed it to incentives and voluntary programs. And as you can see, World Green Building Council is the working group lead. Our working group partners include the US Green Building Council, IFC, who's leading today's webinar, as well as Johnson Controls. Over the last approximately 9 months, we've learned that approximately 8 of the 30 cities are extremely interested in this topic of incentives and voluntary programs. And so we'll be working over the next number of months with those cities to provide all the information they could possibly want to need to make voluntary programs such as incentives and others their chosen policy and project. So that is it from me. Again, I welcome you. I am looking forward to learning more about EDGE certification, and I hope you are as well. I'll now pass over the controls to Corinne.
Hi, Corinne, can you hear us? Can you unmute, please?
I am so sorry. I launched off without unmuting. So I wanted to say a big thank you to Copenhagen Center for Energy Efficiency and to the World Green Building Council, who is leading this important part of the Building Efficiency Accelerator, looking at incentives and certification. Thanks for making this happen, and thanks also to our audience out there, who I hope will find out may include some of the cities with whom we're already working on EDGE and on green building codes. So,
Hi, Corinne, can you unmute yourself?
sorry, somehow I muted myself again. I do apologize. So what is our dream state? Our dream state is, of course, a city where all of our buildings are resource efficient, they're all green, and that reduces local business costs, it improves the standard of living of our inhabitants. Maybe it reduces somewhat the investment that we have to make every few years on water and energy grid expansion. And of course, we know will help to save us all from catastrophic climate change by reducing GHG, as well as other pollutants that are affecting health in our jurisdiction. At the same time, we'd be growing green jobs, and we'd be recognized as a leader, a leading city. And for some reason, here we go. Sorry, I'm having trouble advancing my slides. Okay, so putting the dream aside, in the next half an hour, we'll be talking about the voluntary mechanisms and the incentives that are available out there for cities to consider when they're thinking about putting together an incentive structure or promoting green buildings. And we'll be talking about EDGE. We'll be talking about how it is not only a certification, but a tool to help designers, an affordable certification, and an easy way for a city to quantify the impact of its policies in terms, for instance, of tons of GHG avoided, or perhaps kilowatt hours saved, or cubic meters of water saved. But I would emphasize, and we'll see at the end of the presentation, that there are many certifications out there, and people are using them already across the world, harnessing their capability as a mechanism to apply incentives. And I'll briefly go over what we have surveyed as the incentives available to a city. And then at the end of the presentation, we can go into them in a little bit more depth. But essentially, moving from left to right, from the easiest, lowest cost options to the more time-intensive and resource-intensive options on the right, we have publicity. It is a powerful force that any city has to simply encourage, recognize, maybe set up some kind of challenge or a competition. It's relatively costless, but it means so much for a corporation to be shown as being a good public citizen. And then we have number 2 here, expedited approval. Again, this is a low-cost idea that cities can expedite approvals for building designs that are proven to be green. That would involve a little bit of organization, but not exactly cash out of the door. Then there are land use changes. These options, whether they be density bonuses, or whether they be provision for different use of a property than was originally zoned. That's a bit more complex to handle, but again, it's not cash out of the door up front. And then number 4, these are the financial incentives. And they do take quite a lot more in terms of resource allocation and things like grants and revolving funds, tax reduction, and avoiding or exemption from fees. All of this takes a bit of bureaucratic procedure to be put in place. So what all of these need, though, is a certification mechanism or a way to identify what is your green building, what qualifies for any one of these incentives. We believe that incentives can help kickstart change, and in some cases really are needed to accelerate change in a sector that is quite complex, that has many decision makers. Homeowners, builders, developers, investors are just some of those decision makers who all need to change their decision-making pattern at the same time. And that's why we're very interested to talk to cities about kickstarting the virtuous circle of change with incentive packages. And once this virtuous circle is kickstarted, we know that it will be sustained. This slide, which I won't go into in detail, but you will find all of the reference articles in the materials after the presentation. It really shows how a growing body of evidence supports the fact that from a purely commercial side, each critical decision maker in our ecosystem is finding that green buildings are paying off. Higher sales prices, quicker sales, lower utility bills, or lower default rates for banks even. So again, it could be a momentous change that could then move automatically through market forces if you consider incentivizing green buildings a little bit upfront to start that virtuous circle moving forward. So I want to talk very briefly about IFC's whole green building program, of which EDGE, although an important part, is just a part. We looked already at the variety of stakeholders out there, and what we have put together is a program on green building codes and policies focused in a conversation to the public sector, a program for the promotion of demonstration projects where we co-opt leading private sector developers who are ready to demonstrate physically that green buildings make commercial sense. We are adding incentives to those demonstration projects and more broadly across the market by providing a definition of a green home and a reliable certification system that's affordable. And in markets where there are already certification systems, we stand ready to fortify those systems as well. And we can talk a little bit more about how we're working with the Chinese certification 3-star system later. And we're also working with banks on new financial products so that we can help that virtuous circle flow smoothly and banks understand what a green building is and why a green building portfolio is superior, and launch special, preferential, if you like, financing. Our goal on the certification system side is, whether through EDGE or other voluntary certifications in the markets where we work, we want to raise the overall certification level to at least 20%. The idea being that we feel if 1 in 5 projects is green, a developer has to think twice before not going green. So the idea behind EDGE is very much a mass market certification. It's applicable to all types of buildings, high-end to low-end. It's metrics driven. It gives a highly quantified projection of performance of a building design, and the whole impetus behind EDGE is to go mass market so that we can get to that 20% level, working hand in hand with other certifications as well. So far, we have over 1 million square meters certified across 14 countries, and we have put the certification system and the EDGE software as a design tool interplay with IFC's own clients, and we've been able to turn around our own building sector business so that a huge amount is now green. We've invested over 2 billion for our own account, and you probably want to multiply that by at least 2, maybe 3 or 4 in terms of the total number of green buildings that the EDGE tool has helped facilitate. Very quickly, wanted to show you the outline of different types of projects. When a project is certified, each project goes up onto our website along with a little case study. I'll give you our website here at the bottom. And you'll see here we go from retail to low-cost residences in India and Vietnam, to medical center in Lebanon, high-end Citra towers in Indonesia, high-end residences with canopies in Brazil, cutting-edge HQ for Johnson Controls in China, and with City Express, these are very much kind of mid-range hotels, not high-end hotels at all. So high-end, mid, and frankly low-income housing, all of these sectors EDGE is working with at the moment. So I mentioned earlier that we're not only a certification, we look at ourselves, first of all, you see here on the left, as a design tool, a design aid. Then we are a certification, setting a standard of 20% efficiency, and then working with partners, delivering certification for each building one at a time. The software is completely free. That means that designers early on can play around with different options long before even they have their first design planned. They can, at a very high level, figure out the kinds of options that they should bear in mind. The software covers at a city level the right climate, and also has locally relevant solutions for resource efficient design. And the nice thing about it is within moments you have at least a rough estimate of how much additional cost would be involved in an EDGE certification and how much would be the payback in terms of lower utility bills. And in the green section there you can see payback in years is just 1.9 years in this particular case. Okay, I think I've already covered this. The 20% target covers both energy use, water use, and 20% embedded energy in materials. We felt this was very important as we were focused very much on the developing world, where new buildings are going up at a far more rapid rate than elsewhere, and the footprint of the building materials amidst the whole footprint of the built environment was particularly large. Very briefly, this is the EDGE certification network. We work with the Green Business Certification part of the US Green Building Council, who of course have led the world on green certification with the LEED program. And we also work with a consortium between ThinkStep and SGS, the well-known certifier across a variety of sectors, including greenhouse gas relevant sectors. These two certification companies work across the world unless we have a local partner and we have local partners in Philippines, Costa Rica, India, Indonesia, South Africa, and Vietnam. And those local partners very frequently are the World Green Building Council's partner, local Green Building Council partner institution. So at a high level, what does it require to get an EDGE certification? We've tried to streamline this process as much as we can. From registration, a user would put their design into the software, do a self-assessment, hire an auditor on the design. The auditor would recommend a preliminary certificate to the certifier, one of those Green Building Councils or GBCI, one of our certification providers. The certification provider would give the preliminary certificate, then the documentation would be shared with the client and their construction firm. The building would be built. The as-built documentation would then be reviewed, and at that point there would also be a site visit, and then the final EDGE certification post-construction would happen. We felt it was very important to make sure that there was a site visit, as so often things are changed between the design stage and actual construction. And now I'm going to just hand over to my colleague Ommid, who I hope will be able to show us very briefly a glimpse of how the software actually works in real time.
Thank you, Corinne, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. Here, as Corinne mentioned, I will be very quick to show you how the software works. But to add also to what Corinne mentioned about the levels of certification, at the preliminary design certification, that certificate can be used for incentives. So we designed that certificate so that banks and governments, they can take that certificate as an advanced way of understanding that building will follow certain requirements, and then use that to provide incentives even before the site construction is finished. Because that was one of the gaps in the market that we identified. So the EDGE can be reached through edgebuildings.com. This is the website that one can access, and we have, you know, as again Corinne mentioned, we have our projects, we have our EDGE trained experts. As Jonathan mentioned, we have a target of training EDGE experts globally. We have the certification process, the free software, and there would be information around discovering more data. For example, we report our savings on ongoing basis, how much savings we achieved so far. Clicking on the EDGE app, you can access the application. The application is free to use, and everyone can log in and use with their email address. The way that this application works, you can select one of the building types. We have 5 building types here. I'm showing a hotel. Under the hotel and under the design tab, I can select which country I want to design. We have more than 130 countries already built in. And within each country, then you have choice of cities that you can select. And by selecting each city, the information will be pre-populated into the system. And one then can define more details of the construction and building size. When I move on to energy section, you can see that there's a range of energy efficiency measures that one can select. And this range is predefined to make the process for the user easy. For example, if I select insulation of the roof, you can see that software reports the savings 2.6% against the baseline. So this is the baseline and this is the improved case, and there will be 2.6% saving using the insulation of the roof. The cost, how much this will cost for this specific building, and how much would be the payback, and this is in local currency, as well as utility cost reduction per month. And these are the numbers that developers and people will understand how much they will be saving on their utilities per month. These are the information that are available within few clicks. The same, for example, if I select energy efficient light bulbs and other measures, for example, you can see that the saving will grow. So the same logic will apply for water efficiency, and with the same level of detail of information, and on materials embodied energy efficiency. I stop here and hand over back to Corinne.
Thanks so much, Ommid, and do jump in, particularly in the next section, because I think your insights will aid greatly in our discussion when we get to the cities section on different incentive programs. So I'm going to just skip over this slide very quickly because we're already hitting the half-hour point, I think. But just to, in summary, why do we think that we might be able to go really mass market with the EDGE certification? Why do we think it's so applicable, and why has it taken off so well so far? Essentially, the decision to build green is quite a complex one. And what we've tried to do is really simplify it in the EDGE software tool by building into it that financial calculator that that Ommid just illustrated, so that a developer can go to his board and say, look, this is at least roughly the additional cost versus the benefit of building green. And it allows that decision maker to say yes or no. So what is new about EDGE? Essentially, the financial calculator, which streamlines the commercial decision making for a developer, a quantitative approach which provides everyone with very useful information on projected GHG emission reductions, as well as water and energy savings. EDGE provides a one-stop shop, if you like, because the energy simulation is built in from the start. And even the entire certification process can now be conducted online. The certification process itself really just requires the sort of documentation that already exists in any project. And as I discussed earlier, the design team can start playing around with EDGE to get ideas, to examine different options and what their impacts are at the earliest possible stage of project conceptualization. The other important thing is that we're very location specific, even down to city level, results on climate. And we really think that this whole package can provide a service for every kind of building, high or low end. We've got a growing network of collaborators, both in the development bank world with FMO, CDC, and Proparco. These are the development banks of the Netherlands, the UK, and France. We're also working closely with KfW and a number of other banks. Also, we've highlighted here some of the banks, the commercial banks that we're working with in Turkey, in Costa Rica, and the real estate funds that we're working with in Africa, design firms like Perkins Eastman, HOK, Architect in Asia, Archetype in Asia, Bouygues, the large worldwide construction group from France, Crédit is the real estate developer institution in India, and of course the World Green Building Council. They were perhaps our earliest partner. One other thing I want to bring out amidst this slide is the Climate Bonds Initiative. There is a growing market now for climate bonds. This has really taken off with banks. Corporations are beginning to move into the area, and when municipalities issue bonds, now they're beginning to think, can I issue this as a green bond? The Climate Bonds Initiative is an initiative to define what are the eligible assets for a green bond, and we've been working closely with them, and an EDGE asset is also a climate bond asset, along with other certifications as well. Depending on the certification, there may be other requirements beyond that particular certification, but with EDGE, because it's got the energy analysis built in, the climate bond definition it just says if it's an EDGE certified building, it's a green asset. So now, circling back round those incentive types, let's look at a few case studies of where municipalities have worked with incentives. So we are based here in Washington, D.C., right beside Arlington, and so couldn't resist highlighting this example from our neighboring municipality. And Ommid, jump in if you would like to add.
Explain this.
Yeah.
So, like one of the examples of incentives, for example, is this one, which is quite a smart way of providing incentives. What Arlington is doing is based on the LEED certified building, LEED certification in Arlington in USA, where the incentives are granted to the developers where they provide additional density of 0.25 floor area ratio. Corinne, please keep in the previous slide. Or offering additional floor up to 3 stories to the buildings where they meet LEED Silver rating or higher. And the interesting thing is that they take a bond from the developer as a guarantee for them to meet that certification level. And if they fail to meet that certification level, the city will take that bond credit to the city. So it's kind of a acknowledgement or a guarantee from the developer to ensure that they will meet that certain level of certification. Let's move on to the next one. Another example. This is another example from China, where the 3-star certification in Beijing, given by the Ministry of Housing and Urban and Rural Development, MOHARD, they provide cash subsidy per square meter of certified buildings for 2-star certified buildings, which is a Chinese green building certification system. They offer almost $7 per square meter, and for 3-star, they provide $13 per square meter. But the requirement is that they must get the full post-construction certification, and without that, they wouldn't get that incentive. Kind of encouraging developers to go all the way to the post-construction certification. And the last one, Corinne, is an example in Brazil, again using different types of certifications, LEED, Aqua, PBE, and also EDGE certified buildings. And this has been incentives by providing increase in density and this discount on the one-off tax. Basically, this is the way that city is providing incentives for certified buildings. And the projects which introduce green space and increase permeability, they get this density bonus based on the third-party certifications or energy labels that they can get. So these are some examples that uses the green certification system to offer incentive plans, as Corinne mentioned in the earlier slides. If you go to the last one, these are the potential cities, and some of them, these are the cities that we worked with within IFC and EDGE program, and some of them are cities that we are still working with. For example, in Mandaluyong City in Philippines, we developed a green building code there, and there was an incentive program based on the tax that offered to the green buildings in Mandaluyong, and there was a fine as well for buildings that are not meeting the requirements. There was a fine that will be imposed on the buildings they do not comply with the requirements. But the potential for this is massive, and this is one of the most important pieces of puzzle to start the green building movement globally. I stop here. Corinne, back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Ommid. Yes, this really concludes our presentation. I've put at the bottom my email address because I am not a green building specialist, but I am probably going to be the quickest person to put you in touch with the right person for your part of the world within what is now about a 30-man team working on green building certification and also codes at IFC. There was one thing I wanted to add as we mentioned the 3-star certification. That is a great example of a third-party certification program where we're working with the Chinese government to actually add to that existing certification to help them streamline it and broaden its adoption. So I just wanted to emphasize that it's IFC talking here. We've talked a lot about EDGE certification, but it's IFC's broader program and broader team that we want to put at your disposal, and you might want to talk about other certification programs apart from EDGE. We are open to talk to the BEA cities and cities who are thinking of signing up on all of these different parameters. Okay, so at that point, I'm going to hand over, with many thanks to Ommid and to Jonathan, I'm going to hand over for a few minutes of Q&A to Aris.
So let's continue with the Q&A session. We received one question for Jonathan. And Jonathan, the question is, does the Green Building Council and the Building Accelerator have the capacity to support other interested cities?
Yes, the answer to that question would be generally yes. So it sounds like perhaps the person who asked that question is a city official who is already part of the BEA. And if that's the case, then that person can get in touch with myself or anyone from World Resources Institute. We could facilitate an introduction to the National Green Building Council there. So for example, the city of Tshwane in South Africa is receiving support from the Green Building Council of South Africa. And the exact nature of the support, whether it's helping to design the policy and the project, or helping to get feedback from stakeholders about exactly what would be the best type of incentive that would motivate them to do new and existing buildings as green buildings, absolutely, we can make that connection. So we just need to know who that's from, and we'll facilitate the relationship.
Thank you, Jonathan. Corinne, the next question is for you, and the question is, what might be the expected duration for EDGE certification of a green building from start to finish?
Right. Ommid, jump in, but we generally think of certification as in no way delaying the whole process, so it's not an additive period of time. It takes perhaps about 5 to 10 business days to complete the process, we estimate. That is between all of the parties involved. Any other indicator, Ommid?
Right. I mean, the design, the point you mentioned is that is valid for design, and then it's valid for final certification as well. The process is streamlined online. All the information will be uploaded online and reviewed online, other than the site visit, which is a half-a-day visit, and it's very streamlined with the idea to make the process very easy and cost-effective.
Thank you, Corinne and Ommid. The next question is for both Corinne and Ommid, and it says, congratulations to IFC and its partners for the progress on EDGE certifications. Interesting to see the range of case studies of incentives for green buildings using EDGE system in China and Brazil. Do you see these types of incentives programs being replicated in other countries and cities to promote green buildings?
I think, Ommid, can you reply to that?
Of course, yes. This is exactly the idea that we have, you know, in different sectors. The main element that we started with is to work with the banking sector. So IFC and World Bank, we have access and relation with the banking sectors in emerging markets. And that's where we are working with our partner banks to influence the financing sector to provide incentives to green buildings. But also, this is not something that as IFC and World Bank we can do it all. We need every party to support and contribute. One of the examples that I can give you is, for example, in Lebanon, the Central Bank of Lebanon offers green building incentives. We are working with them to broaden the definition of green building so that the incentive program can flow. The problem we have seen in incentives is very, very interesting, because sometimes the incentive doesn't exist, and sometimes the incentive is in place, but the way that it's being defined, nobody uses it. So the idea here is, one, to define the eligibility for incentive in a way that it can flow and work. And the second is, if there's no incentive, to start working with incentives and creating that incentives. You know, any of the cities that they are interested in working on eligibility for incentives, we would be happy to help them, work with them to create that process in place. And incentives are not always money. So as we showed in the slide, there are certain levels of incentives that we can create, so that to move from non-fiscal incentives all the way to fiscal, and then once we have the support from city, other organizations like financial organizations and others can join it much easier.
Thank you, Ommid and Corinne. The next question is, if there is already a well-promoted local, national green building certification system, such as in China,
how can EDGE add value locally?
Can I take this, Corinne? Is that okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Sure. So, for us, the target is to get to at least 20% of green certified buildings. And interesting enough, that example of China. China has 50% target by 2020. The president announced that 50% of all buildings will be green by 2020. That's a very, very aggressive and high target. And we believe that it is possible to be achieved. The way that we are working in China is supporting the China Green Building Program to be streamlined. So EDGE has a specific module for China that links EDGE to China Green Building labeling system to enable the designers to use EDGE at the design stage to design their buildings and then download a report that can be recognized by MOHART for certifying by 3-star. So in a sense, we are supporting the local program to grow, and also on top of that, if there are buildings that are getting a specifically EDGE certification, that's another target in China as well, that will be also supporting EDGE certification in China as well as 3-star certification. So we don't see this as a competition, we see this as a complement and support that we provide to this type of countries.
Thanks, Ommid. The next question is for Corinne, and the question is, how do auditors obtain the necessary qualification to perform an EDGE audit?
Okay, well, I will give you a very high-level response, and Ommid is really going to be the expert on this. Auditors generally go to an auditor training through either one of the global certification providers or one of the local certification providers. They then recommend that trainee for the exam, which is delivered by a big organization, at least in the US, called Prometric. Does an awful lot of examinations all across the world. And then they sign up with a certification provider, and they have a certain contract that they have to adhere to, and then they start operating. Oh, Ommid, anything to add?
Just to add to it, there is another level of personal certification. We call them EDGE experts, and the EDGE expert is kind of the first step to become an EDGE auditor. Most of our, for example, if there is an advisor to a client, an advisor in the banking sector, an advisor in the city, we encourage them to become EDGE experts. And EDGE experts, then they can take another day of training and sign a contract and become EDGE auditors. EDGE experts are free of the partners, so they will be managed directly by IFC. We manage EDGE experts globally. We already published the name of EDGE experts that we have globally, and this target is growing. Our target is to train 500,000 EDGE experts globally, and certify 500,000 EDGE experts globally. So then EDGE experts, they have very easy entry line to become EDGE auditors if they need to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last question is, I think for both, I don't know if it's for Ommid or Corinne, what is the expected cost for EDGE certification for the different categories of projects in India?
And here I'm going to again pass over to Ommid, as we're seeing the certification costs come down over time, and it's a dynamic answer. Ommid?
Sure. I'm just trying to look at our website to remember the costs in India, but all the data is published on our website. So the cost for registration of projects in India is 20,000 rupees, and then the price for certification is per square meter is 16 rupees for the smaller projects, and if you go to large projects, it's 10 rupees per square meter. The certification costs, the good thing about EDGE is that what you see as the cost is the only cost. You don't need to pay for energy modeling, for any other external modeling costs or any other costs outside. So there's a certification and audit cost, and that's all the cost is there. We also would be happy to work with any specific client that wants to certify any projects. We encourage clients to come and discuss with us if there is any need for discussion on a specific project types.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the detailed responses to the questions. And now, ladies and gentlemen, finally we come to the end of the webinar. We would like to say thanks to Jonathan, Corinne, and Ommid for the informative and interesting presentations, and to the audience for their active participation. The presentations will be beneficial for all stakeholders involved in green buildings. Thank you for your attention, and wish you a good day or night from Copenhagen.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.